Before the world learned to count years, before humans divided time into dynasties and calendars, the night itself was different. It was darker, deeper, and quieter, as if the sky had not yet learned how to be interrupted. In those ancient nights, people believed the world was listening. The mountains listened to the wind. The rivers listened to the earth. And humans, sitting beside small fires, listened to everything else. They listened not because they were afraid, but because they knew the world was alive. When thunder rolled across the sky, it was not only sound. It was a presence. When rain arrived after long drought, it was not coincidence. It was permission. And when mist rose from the valleys at dawn, people believed something unseen had passed through during the night. This was the age when dragons were not legends. They were explanations. Tonight, we are not here to prove whether dragons existed or not. That question belongs to daylight, to logic, to sharp edges. Tonight belongs to something older and softer. Tonight belongs to memory, imagination, and the slow rhythm of stories told when the world is finally quiet. So before we continue, if you enjoy stories meant to be listened to in the dark, stories that move gently and ask nothing of you except attention, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps these quiet stories find their way to others who are also listening late at night. Now, lower your voice. Slow your breath. The dragon clan does not like to be rushed. Long before humans built cities, the dragon clan was already awake. They did not arrive suddenly. There was no single moment when dragons appeared fully formed in the sky. Instead, they emerged gradually, shaped by the same forces that shaped the world itself. When the first storm gathered strength, something moved within the clouds. When the first river learned how to curve around stone, something followed its path. When the earth cracked and lifted into mountains, something coiled beneath the rising land. These were not creatures born of flesh alone. They were formed from balance. The dragon clan did not see themselves as rulers. They were not kings of the sky or masters of the sea. They were watchers, listeners, and keepers of a rhythm older than language. Each dragon carried a different aspect of the world. Some belonged to rain, sleeping within dark clouds until the land below needed water. Others belonged to rivers and oceans, moving slowly beneath surfaces that reflected the sky. A few belonged to the mountains, their bodies woven into stone and earth, unseen but deeply felt. They did not speak often. They did not need to. The world understood them without words. Humans, at first, did not fear dragons. Fear came later, after power and ambition complicated everything. In the beginning, humans simply noticed patterns. When storms arrived gently, crops grew well. When storms became violent, something was wrong. When rivers overflowed, it meant balance had shifted. Dragons were not blamed or worshipped. They were acknowledged, like the wind or the changing of seasons. People left offerings not to please dragons, but to remind themselves to live carefully. To take only what was needed. To respect water and soil. To remember that the world was not owned. This understanding did not come from instruction. It came from observation. And for a long time, it worked. As human settlements grew larger, something subtle changed. Fires burned brighter. Tools became sharper. Stone walls replaced open land. Humans learned how to reshape the world instead of moving within it. The dragon clan noticed. They watched forests thin and rivers redirected. They listened as the sounds of night shifted from insects and wind to metal and voices. Still, they did nothing. Change itself was not forbidden. The dragons understood that growth was part of balance too. But growth without restraint was dangerous. The elders of the dragon clan gathered rarely. But when they did, it meant something important was unfolding. They spoke not of punishment or intervention, but of patience. Humans, they believed, were still young. It was during this era that the first stories of dragon-human encounters began to spread. A farmer claimed he saw a long shape moving through low clouds before rain fell exactly where his fields needed it. A fisherman swore that something beneath the water turned his boat gently away from hidden rocks during a storm. A traveler described eyes glowing faintly within mist, watching but never approaching. These stories were not dramatic. They did not speak of battles or destruction. They spoke of guidance. And guidance, when unnoticed, is the most powerful kind. But humanity, as it always does, began to ask for more. Kings wanted certainty. They wanted guarantees. They wanted to know that their rule was approved by something greater than themselves. And so they began to claim connection to the dragon clan. This is where the idea of the dragon throne was born. A ruler who governed with wisdom was said to possess dragon favor. When a reign was peaceful, the skies cooperated. When corruption spread, disasters followed. Dragons became symbols of legitimacy, painted onto banners and carved into stone. The dragon clan did not object. Symbols, after all, are harmless. What concerned them was the growing belief that dragons could be commanded. Among the dragon clan, laws existed long before humans wrote their first codes. The most important law was restraint. Dragons were not meant to rule directly. They were not meant to choose kings or shape empires. They were meant to keep the world from tipping too far in any direction. Too much rain, too little rain. Too much growth, too much destruction. Balance required distance. As long as humans understood this, the dragon clan remained present, if unseen. But understanding fades when power grows. Late one night, as clouds gathered unusually low, a young dragon lingered longer than it should have above the human world. It watched fires burn in straight lines, roads cut through land, and cities grow dense and restless. The young dragon felt something unfamiliar. Not anger. Not pride. But concern. Below, the world was changing faster than before. And for the first time, the dragon wondered whether silence was still enough. That question, small as it seemed, would eventually reshape everything. But that is a story that belongs deeper into the night. The dragon clan had always believed that silence was a form of wisdom. For countless ages, they watched the world unfold without interfering, trusting that balance would correct itself if given enough time. Mountains rose and eroded. Rivers changed course. Species appeared and disappeared. Nothing remained fixed, and that was precisely how the world was meant to be. Humans, however, did not like uncertainty. As generations passed, they became increasingly uncomfortable with the idea that the sky answered to no one, that rain fell according to rhythms beyond command, and that prosperity could vanish as quietly as it arrived. The desire to understand slowly transformed into the desire to control. The dragon clan noticed the change not in words or actions, but in tone. The nights grew louder. The air felt restless. The land itself seemed tense, as if waiting. Among the dragons, the elders sensed a shift in the world's rhythm. It was not yet dangerous, but it was unfamiliar. When they gathered in the high places where clouds thinned into silence, they spoke of humanity with careful concern. Humans were learning too quickly. They learned how to dig deeper, build higher, and reshape landscapes in ways that once required centuries of patience. What troubled the dragons was not this progress, but the speed of it. Balance requires time to adjust, and time was being ignored. Still, the elders chose restraint. To interfere too early would be to interrupt growth. To interfere too late would be to repair damage that could no longer be undone. And so they waited. It was during this waiting that the laws of the dragon clan were spoken aloud for the first time, not because they were new, but because they were being tested. The first law was spoken quietly, as if reminding themselves rather than declaring it: a dragon must never rule humanity directly. The second law followed. Heavier in tone: a dragon must never bind its fate to a human life. And the third law, spoken last, carried the weight of countless ages: a dragon must never alter the natural cycle beyond repair. These laws had never needed enforcement before. Dragons understood them instinctively. But now, instinct was no longer enough. The first true test came not from a king or a war, but from suffering. In a fertile region bordered by rivers and low mountains, the rain stopped coming. At first, no one panicked. Dry seasons were natural. But weeks turned into months, and months into years. The soil hardened. Crops failed. Rivers thinned until their beds cracked open under the sun. People prayed. They waited. They offered apologies to the land. Nothing changed. From above, the dragon clan observed the imbalance. This drought was not a punishment. It was a consequence of subtle disruptions elsewhere. Forests cleared too quickly. Water diverted carelessly, land exhausted beyond recovery. Balance had already been broken. The elders decided to let the drought continue, believing that human adaptation would restore harmony. But one dragon disagreed. This dragon was young, not in years, but in experience. It had watched humans closely, more closely than most. It had listened to their voices, learned their patterns, and felt a strange pull toward their fragile persistence. When the elders spoke of patience, the young dragon felt hesitation instead. Below, children cried from hunger. Elders lay weak beneath empty skies. Entire villages prepared to abandon the land they had known for generations. The young dragon descended without permission. The rain that followed was gentle at first. It fell softly, soaking into the earth without flooding it. Seeds that had waited too long finally sprouted. Rivers swelled carefully, filling their beds but not spilling over. Life returned almost immediately. The people rejoiced. They did not see the dragon. They did not need to. To them, the rain was a miracle, a sign that the world had forgiven them. For a time, everything seemed right. But balance, once disturbed, rarely returns quietly. The rain continued. And continued. What began as relief turned into excess. Fields flooded. Homes collapsed. The same rivers that had once dried into scars now tore through villages with unstoppable force. The people who had praised the sky now cursed it. Above, the young dragon weakened. It had given too much, too quickly. It had ignored the cost of forcing balance rather than restoring it gradually. When the elders finally intervened, they did not punish the young dragon. They did not need to. The dragon returned to the clouds exhausted, carrying a lesson etched deeply into its being. Compassion without restraint could be as destructive as cruelty. After this incident, the dragon clan withdrew further. They still watched, but from greater distance. They allowed imbalance to correct itself slowly, even when it caused suffering. To intervene again would be to repeat the same mistake. Humans, unaware of this internal conflict, interpreted the silence differently. They believed the dragons had chosen sides. Kings began to claim that they alone held dragon favor. Symbols of dragons multiplied. Banners, robes, thrones, seals all bore the image of a creature that no longer wished to be represented. The dragon clan felt something unfamiliar again. Discomfort. It was around this time that the idea of divine rulership became firmly rooted in human society. A ruler was no longer merely a leader, but a chosen figure, elevated above others by heaven itself. This belief was convenient. It justified power. It silenced doubt. It transformed ambition into destiny. The dragons understood the danger immediately. If humans believed power came from heaven rather than responsibility, balance would suffer. Yet intervening directly would violate their own laws. They chose a quieter response. Storms became unpredictable. Seasons shifted subtly. Crops thrived in one region while failing inexplicably in another. Nothing severe enough to draw immediate blame, but enough to remind humans that authority did not grant control. Some rulers listened. Others did not. Among the dragon clan, one dragon watched these events with growing unease. This dragon was not young, nor particularly old. It had existed long enough to remember a time when humans were content with less. What troubled it was not human ambition, but human loneliness. As dragons withdrew, humans seemed increasingly isolated beneath the vast sky. They built monuments higher, spoke louder, and reached further, as if trying to fill a silence they did not understand. The dragon wondered whether the distance had grown too great. And in that wondering, the second law trembled. A dragon must never bind its fate to a human life. Yet curiosity is a quiet force, difficult to resist. The dragon began to watch a single human more closely than the rest. Not a king, not a warrior, but a scholar who spent nights observing the stars, asking questions without expecting answers. This human did not pray for power, did not ask for rain, did not claim destiny. He simply wondered. And the dragon listened. That listening would change everything. But the cost of curiosity is always paid later. And the night, though still calm, was growing deeper. The dragon did not approach the human at first. For many nights, it remained hidden beyond sight, coiled within the high mist where moonlight thinned and sound dissolved into stillness. From there, it listened. Not to prayers or demands, but to questions spoken softly into the dark. The scholar sat alone beneath the open sky, ink-stained fingers resting beside unfinished scrolls. He studied the stars not as signs of fate, but as patterns waiting to be understood. When clouds covered the heavens, he did not curse them. When rain fell, he did not praise it. He simply observed. This unsettled the dragon. Humans usually looked upward to ask for something. This one looked upward as if expecting nothing in return. The dragon clan had always believed that curiosity was a human trait, born from short lifespans and fragile bodies. Dragons, eternal and resilient, had no need to question what would outlast them anyway. Yet watching this scholar, the dragon felt something unfamiliar stir within its ancient mind. Curiosity was not weakness. It was hunger. And hunger, once awakened, rarely fades. On the seventh night of observation, the dragon descended. It did not arrive as thunder or flame. It chose subtlety, reshaping its form until scales became cloth, horns faded into shadow, and its towering presence folded into a human silhouette. This act alone bent a rule. To walk among humans was permitted only in times of great necessity. This moment did not qualify. Yet the dragon stepped onto the earth anyway. The scholar sensed someone behind him before he heard footsteps. He turned slowly, brush still in hand, and met the eyes of a stranger dressed in simple robes. There was nothing remarkable about the figure at first glance. No aura of authority. No mark of power. But the air felt heavier. "You are not from this land," the scholar said calmly. The dragon said nothing. "I do not mean by accent," the scholar continued. "I mean by presence." The dragon studied him in silence, surprised not by the words, but by the lack of fear behind them. Most humans reacted to unfamiliarity with suspicion or submission. This one did neither. "You watch the sky every night," the dragon finally said, voice low and measured. "Yes," the scholar replied. "Why?" The scholar paused, considering the question as if it were new. "Because it does not explain itself," he said. "And neither do we." That answer sealed the dragon's fate. From that night on, the dragon returned. Not every night. Not predictably. But often enough that conversations formed, slow and careful. The dragon never named itself. The scholar never asked. They spoke of stars, seasons, and the strange way humans feared endings while dragons feared stagnation. The dragon learned that humans did not seek immortality because they loved life more, but because they had so little time to understand it. The scholar learned that the sky was not cruel, merely indifferent. Each learned more than they should have. With every visit, the dragon felt its form grow heavier. Time behaved differently on the ground. Nights passed quickly. Conversations ended too soon. The dragon, who once measured existence in eras, began to think in evenings. This was the true danger. Not attachment, but adaptation. The dragon clan noticed the absence. Not immediately, but eventually. One dragon's prolonged disappearance disrupted the subtle harmony of their collective awareness. When the elders traced the imbalance, they found the truth. A dragon was walking among humans. The second law had been broken. A dragon must never bind its fate to a human life. Even without a vow, even without a promise, proximity alone was enough to bind destinies. The elders debated. To recall the dragon by force would risk exposure. To allow the bond to continue would risk something far worse. They chose observation. Down below, the scholar aged. At first, the changes were subtle. A slower step. Longer pauses in speech. The dragon noticed them before the scholar did. For the first time, the dragon confronted the truth it had always avoided. Humans do not fade suddenly. They unravel gradually. The dragon had watched civilizations rise and fall without flinching. Yet watching a single human age was unbearable in a way no collapse had ever been. It began to fear endings. One night, the scholar asked a question he had never dared to voice before. "Do beings like you," he said carefully, "ever grow tired of watching others disappear?" The dragon did not answer immediately. "Yes," it said at last. "That is why we watch from afar." The scholar smiled faintly. "And yet," he said, "you are here." The dragon looked away. As years passed, the scholar's hands trembled when holding his brush. His eyesight weakened. His nights beneath the stars grew shorter. Still, he waited, every evening, for a visitor who never aged. The imbalance deepened. The dragon could no longer deny it. To remain was to bind fate. To leave was to abandon. Both choices violated the laws in different ways. The breaking point came quietly. The scholar fell ill during winter. Not dramatically. No sudden collapse. Just a persistent weakness that refused to fade. When the dragon visited, the scholar was lying beneath thin blankets, breathing shallowly. "You should not be here," the scholar whispered. "You disturb the air." "I am the disturbance," the dragon replied softly. The scholar smiled, tired but peaceful. "Then stay," he said. "Disturb it with me." That night, the dragon made a decision that would echo through ages. It reached into its essence and offered something forbidden. Not immortality. Not power. Time. A fragment of it. The dragon slowed the scholar's unraveling, just enough to grant him years instead of months. The act was precise, restrained, and yet irreversible. The third law shattered. A dragon must never alter the natural cycle beyond repair. The dragon clan felt it immediately. The sky trembled. The rhythm of the world shifted, subtle but undeniable. Somewhere below, a human life was being held beyond its appointed measure. The elders did not hesitate this time. The dragon would be summoned. The bond would be severed. And the price would be paid. The night grew heavy. Stars dimmed behind clouds. And for the first time in recorded memory, the heavens prepared to judge one of their own. The summons did not come as sound. It arrived as gravity. The dragon felt at the moment the sky above the mortal realm shifted. Not visibly, but fundamentally. Air thickened. Time hesitated. Even the stars seemed to hold their breath, as if waiting for permission to continue shining. This was the call of the dragon court. It could not be ignored. The dragon stood at the edge of the scholar's dwelling, its human form unmoving. Inside, the scholar slept fitfully, unaware that the balance of heaven itself was turning because of him. For the first time in centuries, the dragon hesitated. Not because it feared judgment, but because leaving meant something irreversible. The dragon stepped outside. As soon as its foot crossed the threshold, the sky tore open. Not violently. Not dramatically. The clouds parted with ritual precision, revealing a corridor of pale light descending from nowhere and everywhere at once. The dragon shed its human form. Scales emerged like memory returning to flesh. The air bent around its true body, vast and ancient, yet subdued, as if even power knew when to bow. With a final glance toward the mortal world, the dragon ascended. The dragon court existed beyond direction. No north. No south. No up or down. It was a space where thought solidified into architecture, where judgment shaped the environment itself. Pillars of light stretched endlessly, each etched with the records of time. Beneath them flowed not water, but history. The elders waited. They did not sit on thrones. They hovered, suspended within rings of shifting script, their forms immense yet restrained, as though the universe itself struggled to contain them. "You have broken 3 laws," one elder spoke, voice echoing without sound. The dragon lowered its head. "I know." "Why?" another asked. The dragon did not answer immediately. Because no answer was sufficient. "To observe humans is permitted," an elder continued. "To walk among them is restricted. To bind fate is forbidden. To alter time is a crime against the cycle." Each word settled like weight upon the dragon's scales. "You understand," the elder said. "Yes." "Then speak." The dragon lifted its gaze. "I did not act out of rebellion," it said. "Nor ambition. Nor desire for worship." "Then out of what?" the court demanded. The dragon paused. "Out of compassion" would sound weak. "Out of curiosity" would sound careless. "Out of love" would sound unforgivable. "I acted," the dragon said slowly, "because I finally understood loss." Silence spread across the court. Loss was a human concept. Dragons endured. Dragons remained. Dragons outlasted grief itself by sheer permanence. To claim understanding of loss was to claim a fracture in eternity. "That understanding," an elder replied coldly, "is precisely why the law exists." The court deliberated. Time passed differently there. A moment could stretch into centuries, or collapse into a breath. The dragon stood unmoving, neither pleading nor resisting. Judgment was not about guilt. It was about consequence. The verdict arrived without ceremony. "You will be stripped of your dominion over time," the elders declared. "You will be bound to form. You will no longer exist as eternal." The words did not strike like thunder. They struck like stillness. "To preserve balance," the elder continued, "you will descend as a lesser being. Long-lived, but finite. Powerful, but limited. You will remain near the human whose fate you altered, until the imbalance resolves." The dragon closed its eyes. This was mercy. And punishment. "There is more," the elder said. The dragon opened its eyes. "The human will not remember you as you are." The dragon's breath caught. "Memory," the elder explained, "is the thread that binds desire. To allow remembrance would prolong suffering." "So he will forget," the dragon said quietly. "He will remember fragments," the elder replied. "A sense of familiarity. A shadow of warmth. But not the truth." The dragon bowed deeply. Judgment was complete. The descent was harsher than the ascent. The dragon fell not through space, but through limitation. Each layer stripped something away. Vast awareness narrowed. Endless perception sharpened into singular sight. Eternity compressed into lifespan. By the time the dragon reached the mortal realm, it was no longer a dragon. It was something else. Something between. The scholar awoke before dawn. The air felt different. He could not explain it, but something vital had shifted, like waking from a dream whose emotional weight lingered even as the details vanished. When he stepped outside, he saw a stranger sitting beneath the old tree. The figure looked young, yet ageless. Familiar, yet unknown. "You should not sit on the cold ground," the scholar said gently. The stranger looked up. Their eyes met. Something passed between them. Not recognition, but resonance. My name, the stranger said after a pause, is unimportant. The scholar smiled faintly. Then sit, he said. Unimportant things often matter most. They sat together in silence as the sun rose. Neither spoke of the past. Neither asked questions they were not meant to answer. Yet something had been repaired. Not perfectly, but enough. Far above, the dragon court observed. The imbalance was stabilizing. The cost had been paid. Still, one elder watched longer than the others. Do you believe, the elder murmured, that the law truly prevented suffering? Another replied softly, no. Then why do we enforce it? The answer came after a long pause. Because even dragons, the elder said, must be protected from themselves. Below, the sun climbed higher. Two figures remained beneath the tree. One mortal. One no longer eternal. And the world, unaware of how close it had come to unraveling, continued to turn.